Welcome everybody to another session of Agile testing and automation. Agile testing and automation. Um, and good afternoon to you again. So, pardon me if my voice I don't come out clearly. I'm a bit. I'm not in my best thingy today. So, pardon me. Previously, that was last week. We did look at acceptance testing, acceptance test driven development, and behavior driven behavior driven development. Okay, and today we are going to be looking at pyramids test pyramid test levels, and test types. One thing that I want to make clear is that I'll only be touching slightly or lightly on test types, but then I'll focus more on test pyramids and test levels. I'll talk about the different test levels in the traditional life cycle, and then how it differs in agile life cycles. So, a guy called Martin Fowler, he's a developer. Um, he's an author, software developer, author, a public speaker on software development, and specializing in object-oriented analysis and design, UML patterns, agile development methodologies, including extreme programming. He defines testing pyramid as a metaphor. He defines it as a metaphor that tells us to group software tests into buckets of different I knew this will catch me out again. Granularity. Okay, I have to repeat this 100 times. See if I'll remember. I knew it would catch me out again. Yeah, so into different granularity, and I've got an example of this testing pyramid here. If you look at it, even before I talked a lot about it. Traditionally, software tests can be done at different levels. And we will be looking at, as I mentioned, we will be looking at test levels later on. But the software testing is done at different levels or phases. Okay, but agile test pyramid, like the one we're looking at here, the whole concept is based on the testing principle of early QA and testing. Remember, we talked about test first approach. So the agile pyramid, test pyramid, of course, follows the same pattern. And one of the things we will realize is that the intention is to eliminate defects as early as possible in the life cycle, because testing is done early. It emphasizes having most of the tests at the lower levels. So if you look at, where's my pointer? Okay, mouse pointer. So if you look at the pyramid itself, you realize that most of the unit testing is at the bottom, the base. And then there's less or fewer tests done in the middle, that is automated acceptance tests. And then there's automated UI tests here. And then at the top, there is exploratory testing that is, done at, very little of them. The whole thing shows how much more testing is done at the different levels. Okay, and if we look at, if I get rid of my mouse for a second, if we look at the traditional one, you will find that fewer, if I could get my pointer again, you'll find that fewer tests are done at the bottom, and unit tests are done at the bottom, and then in the middle there is a bit more automation suite in the middle, and then loads of manual testing done at the top. And most of this manual testing is done in the UI level, right? What does that tell us? That tells us that, I mean, if you're doing unit testing, that of course that comes, you come out with more tests, right? You come out with more tests, and Agile prefers, even if you look at the bottom of this pyramid, you realize that Agile, focuses on preventing bugs, which you want to do. You want to prevent bugs. And then when you look at the traditional one, traditional mentality is about, well, let's do more manual testing. Again, going back to Agile, I'll come back to the traditional. Going back to the Agile, remember, is a test first, takes the test first approach. So even before we write the code, as we looked at TDD previously, before the code is written, we want to write a test and then write the code. So it means that we want to prevent bugs at all costs. Again, back to the traditional one. Traditional says, oh, we can test later. Let's start with some manual testing. In the long run, what happens is let fewer unit tests get written, because it's probably too late to start going back to requirements. There's only so much you can capture. So hence the Agile test pyramid being a very important thing for any development project, right? If you look at it again, unit testing and integration tests are usually automated and created using API-based tools, whilst system and acceptance levels are also automated using GUI tools. Well, I think towards the end of the whole session, in about 2-3 sessions future, we'll be looking at some of these tools. The opposites, of course, of the Agile one is the traditional one, as you would expect to know, right? I'm going to move quickly onto test levels. Test levels. So test levels are test activities that are logically related, often by maturity or completeness of the item under test. These are logically related test activities performed at different phases of a development cycle. And we'll see an example here with this V model diagram. Where's my pointer again? Yeah, you will notice that how each test phase of development, for each test phase, there is a corresponding test activity, right? So at the bottom we see, forgive me, it's not very, yeah, for we've got the low level design, and then on the right hand side we've got unit testing, and then we've got the high level design with integration testing, and then on the left hand side again we've got software specifications, and then we've got system testing. So for every phase of development in the traditional world or sequential development cycle, you have a corresponding testing phase. So we say that in traditionally, testing is phased or is done in phases. So when when user requirements are ready, or user acceptance requirements are ready, a certain kind of test is done there. If you go to the Agile world, or if you come to Agile development, did I get rid of my? Yeah, Agile works differently. Agile works differently. The test levels overlap with each other in Agile projects. What does that mean? For every user story, for instance, you realize that the implementation and the activities overlap. So you pick up one user story, you start working on it, testing gets done there, user acceptance tests will get done there. Different kinds of tests are done at different. We don't wait for a particular phase, okay? Because you've got an iteration, probably 2 weeks to finish all the work that you're done, that you're going to do. So Testing here is overlaps, and I'll give you some examples shortly. Let me see. So during an iteration, as I said, a user story will typically progress sequentially through activities like unit testing. Initially, developers will write their unit test, and then there will be feature acceptance testing, which is broken into two parts. There's the feature verification, which is mostly automated tests to verify acceptance criteria. And then there's the feature validation, which is usually manual and involves collaboration with everybody, developers, testers, and the business, just to make sure that the software is fit for purpose. Right. In this, in a sprint or in an iteration again, you will have system testing not done at any particular phase. So instead of being done at a specific phase, this may start once the first user story is ready, and then it can involve executing functional tests, non-functional tests, all kinds of tests like reliability, etc. That could all be done when a user story is ready. And remember, the way again it works, you're working, the goal is the end of the sprint, right? So one story may have tests, or maybe two stories may have tests that are related. And I also want to mention here that, remember, these unit tests and most of the tests are automated. So throughout the cycle, you're running regression at the same time, you're running performance tests at the same time, all in the sprint. You don't wait for any particular time in the sprint to do any kind of testing. And of course, within that sprint as well, you'll probably be doing your UATs, or all the different kinds of acceptance tests like OAT, operational acceptance testing, regulatory acceptance testing, contract. You probably do that without waiting necessarily for the end of the sprint. Okay, so that just explains what I mean by testing in Agile overlaps with it, because of the nature of the iterations. In the sprint, you just test. Testing types, as I mentioned earlier on, I won't be spending too much time on that, but I thought I'll give us a few examples of testing types. So functional tests. Functional tests, for instance, involves tests that evaluate functions that the system should perform. Example, unit testing, component testing, smoke testing, unit sanity testing. And again, if we want to go through all the different kinds of testing, we'll be wasting our time, right? I thought I'll give some of the examples so that we can go away. But functional testing is one of the types of testing that Agile looks at. And then another one may be non-functional testing. This is testing of how well the system behaves. For instance, load, stress, again, reliability, usability, all those compatibility and those things, they all come, compatibility, yeah, they all come under non-functional. The aim there is to see how well the software, for instance, load and stress. If we have X number of users going on the website at any time, will it crash the website? All these sort of things come under non-functional testing. And the usability is, how well will the software and the test work when a user uses it? How usable will it be? And then there's white box testing, which is testing that derives tests based on their system's internal structure or implementation. So stuff like path testing, again, I'm not going to break all of these down because there are loads of different kinds of testing. So the intention is not to break them down. But then white box testing example could be path testing, decision coverage, workflows or data flows within the system, etc., etc. There are quite a few of them. And then probably our last one will be change-related testing. So this is when changes are made to a system, either to correct a defect or because of a new or changing functionality. Easily, anyone can think of regression as an example, and then confirmation testing. So as I said, there's so many different types of tests, but then I've put them in different these groups to present to us. So functional, non-functional, white box testing. I'm sure somebody will be thinking about black box testing as well. And then there's the change-related testing. So that brings me to the end of today's. Do not have a lot of too much in it. I thought it would be easier to bring this much than bring too much. Next time we come, I'll continue with into testing quadrants, which will look at some levels of testing, how tests, different test types and test levels are included in the development life cycles, and how to differentiate and describe the type of tests to all stakeholders. And we'll also be looking at doing an introduction to test automation in Agile. So those who've been looking forward to that, we're crossing the border. And thank you very much. That brings me to the end of today's session. I'll now allow questions and feedback, questions and answers. I see in the chat, I've seen 3. Okay. Yeah. Right. Yep. So I'll allow any questions, anybody.
Thank you, Eric, for such an insightful session. Well, you've given us a lot in 20 minutes, things that we can always go away and think about. Especially, I'm looking at the pyramid testing.
Yes, sir.
And you looked at it from 2 angles, inverted and yeah. Okay, so the inverted, and so we said one has got more unit tests than the user interface, less of the user interface testing. Yeah.
Yes. So Agile encourages automation.
Okay.
Yeah. And you can see from the left-hand side that, which is the Agile side, that there's more automation. I mean, unit testing is automated, always will be automated as far as I'm aware anyway. So if it's going to be automated, then we're going to have more automated tests. And we want to encourage more unit testing. And remember, Agile is test first. Agile encourages test first approach.
Yeah.
So if we've got most of the stuff automated, that leaves less work, as we've looked at in the past few days, less for manual. Whereas the traditional, you can see traditional is like test later, mostly manual stuff. Yeah. So fewer unit tests, and they spend a lot of time doing manual UI testing.
I think we'll take a question from Indifreke. It says, for a standard project, is it compulsory to do all this testing, or we have some we can do and leave out?
So this is where risk analysis comes in, right? Risk analysis. So you want to look at you want to do a risk analysis and see what you can do without and what you can't do without. If there's stuff that you think you can't do without, you stuff that you can't do without, then you obviously want to test them. But if you can do without it and you can live with it, you won't spend time testing. So it's all down to risk analysis. So
I said, okay.
yeah. So yeah, is it compulsory? It's not compulsory, but it will come back and bite you somewhere really hard if the right thing isn't done. You basically don't want a bug to go into live, which will cost you more money, paying developers to come back and work again. Easy example.
Asada has got her hands up.
Asida, thank you, Eric. Great listening to you.
Thank you very much, William. I have a very quick question for you, Eric.
Okay.
In a project environment, we've heard the word Agile, which combines Agile and waterfall, or Agile in the traditional ways of working as a framework. You have a similar pattern in testing, so in a testing environment. Have you ever had any experience where you had to combine Agile and traditional testing?
Well, as far as I'm aware, I don't think Agile is an official.
No, but it simply means a combination of Agile and waterfall, and that exists in many governments.
That's common, yeah. So when you're faced with challenges like that, personally, as a quality person or as a quality champion or a test analyst, all I care about is what process has the team decided to take? What approach do you want to take? So whatever the project approach the project wants to take, testing works with the project, and then I'll always fight for automation. I always insist on automation, and I always fight for testing first. So I guess the BA, everyone, developers will be fighting for, in the interest of development. A project manager will want to listen to different cases, or the team will want to see what works best for the team and go in that way. So,
okay. So my question actually to you was,
yes.
Have you as a tester ever been in an environment where you've had to deploy a combination of Agile and traditional testing? Or is it one or the other?
Yeah, like I say, I've been in that situation, but we never called it Agile. As a matter
No, I'm not saying, all I'm saying is in a project environment, you have a combination. But in testing environment, have you ever had to use a combination of Agile and traditional testing?
Yes, it happens. Yeah.
So, okay, thank you. And so is there a name for that when you've had to deploy the combination?
There is no name for it. Wherever I've been, they've always called it Agile. But with my Agile experience, I know I could see the waterfall traits. Unless, William or if anybody else can help. But I don't know a name for
it. We can make up a name, watch test.
Thank you, William. Thank you, Eric. Thank you for a great session.
You're welcome, Barbara.
So we can start promoting the new name, watch test. Yeah, Agile testing. Yeah. Okay. Someone says it's called Agile. Will a BA be involved with all the tests conducted or just UAT? From Demola.
Will a BA be involved with all the tests conducted or UAT? A BA will be involved. So again, this takes us back to the cross-functional nature of an Agile team. The whole team's involved or should be involved in testing, depending on what angle you're looking at it from. So yes, the BA will be involved in it, but it depends on exactly what they're doing.
Okay.
So a very quick question.
There's a second part to his question. Will a BA be involved with all the tests conducted, or will they be involved in UAT only? Okay. I think there'll be more involved in UAT than in some of the tests, right? Like automation testing, a BA. I've hardly see a BA unless the BA says, I can do some of the tests and I'm part of the team, so I'll write automated tests, which you hardly see. But usually you want to put people where they're best placed. So they'll be better placed in UAT than in something like automation testing. Did someone?
Yeah, I said I wanted to say
I
something.
said that gone. Was I deviating from the question?
No, you've answered it.
Automated testing. How are you sure the programmer wrote the? Okay, yeah, that's a good question. In automated testing, how are you sure the programmer wrote the right code to the tester? So there's code there are code reviews where somebody reviews the code of the developer before it gets pushed into the before it gets committed or pushed forward. So somebody always, well, it depends on the team again, but as a test analyst with experience, I would push for that. I'll make sure there are code reviews. Most teams do that anyway. So yes, somebody checks it. If it's not, it doesn't have to be a tester and it doesn't have to be a BA, but somebody usually checks it. And if you're on the team as a test analyst, you want to make sure that there are checks in place for code reviews. And even for automated testing that is written by test analysts, there's usually pair. Somebody always reviews it anyway. Okay.
So Eric,
Yes, really.
the V model is
Yes.
is it? What I see is the V model is also known as the SDLC. But when you take a look at the V model, it shows correlated testing stages.
SDLC.
Yeah, the software
SDLC. That's
development
software
life cycle.
development. Yeah.
Yeah,
Works.
because when you look at the SDLC, all the stages.
Oh, you. Sorry. Yeah.
All the stages of the SDLC are being shown here. Is the V model just something to reflect the correlated?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. That's it.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Because this is basically sequential.
Yes.
Development. Yeah.
Yes.
So.
Sequential. Yeah. Okay.
Any feedbacks? Anybody contributions? Always appreciated.
So, Eric, would we be focusing more on the test types? Because I know some people might be interested in exploratory testing, and what makes exploratory testing?
So, you know what? This is why we've got feedback there as well. If anybody feels like there's something we did in the past, or there's something you want to see as part of these my sessions, please let us know about it, and then we'll feed it in at some point. So if you're asking for that, we can do that. But yeah.
So, Eric, at what stage do we decide whether, let's say, if a project is using the Agile approach, does it mean automatically we end up with the Agile testing?
Yes. Yes.
So, is that what decides the test strategy?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Definitely.
So when you end up in a waterfall environment, there's no way you can end up with an Agile testing approach. You can't build that into the process.
You have to justify why you're using a different approach.
Okay.
If the project is happy for you to take a different approach, I mean, and you can, if you can justify it, and the project is happy for you to do that, then why not?
Okay.
It happens as well.
All right.
Yeah.
And that's my last question. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Oh, what to hear?
So,
Okay.
okay. So, Eric, thank you.
You're welcome.
And tomorrow we've got DevOps. And a big question people do ask is, what at all is DevOps? So, Carlos, our technical architect and technical consultant, will be sharing and throwing more light on DevOps tomorrow. And then Thursday, we've got Dr. Shelley Thompson sharing on Agile coaching. But I'm also a big fan of DevOps, so I will look forward to the DevOps tomorrow. And definitely, the soft skills of coaching are important for everyone who wants to be an Agile coach or just wants to be a servant leader. Coaching is an important topic. So tomorrow we've got DevOps, and DevOps is at 12 o'clock to 12:30. And I've just been reminded, Yusuf will be starting something on cloud, and it will be on Fridays. And that's Yusuf is still ironing out all the necessary things to be able to kick off on the cloud. So we are looking forward to hearing more about AWS, Azure, creating containers, and just getting ourselves immersed in the cloud environment. If you've not immersed yourself yet in the cloud environment, there's an opportunity to get immersed into it. We'll be sending the links out, and Yusuf is working on the final details. But for tomorrow, we've got DevOps. Have a wonderful day.
Thanks. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks.